just to remind you, you are more than welcome to unmute your mic and speak with me. It's really nice to catch up with everybody. If you do, that will be recorded, and we will share this recording on our YouTube channel, and it will be available for all Turn On customers, but also Microsoft customers as well. So just to make you aware of that. This afternoon, we are going to focus on how to use Teams to transform learning. It's been an unusual time over the past 12 months. We've boomeranged between class teaching and also distance learning, and then we've had to embrace the hybrid situation where we may have had some pupils with us in the classroom and others working remotely from their home, whether it's an isolation scenario or whether they were in a bubble because they were waiting for results. So what we're going to focus on this afternoon is how we can use Teams to transform learning, but also how we can take some of what we've learned from all the remote and hybrid learning that we've been delivering and how we might transfer that back into a face-to-face situation. We will focus on how to minimize workloads upon teachers. We'll look at working efficiently, but we'll also consider how to create really engaging and exciting content so that it's available to harness whether you're teaching in primary school or whether you're working in a secondary school or you're in college. Whichever phase you're in, there'll be something for you. It's going to be one of those things where you are going to be able to take away hopefully something you have learnt, and you will be able to transfer it to where you are now. One moment, I just swapped screens. I think my internet just blipped there. Let's just swap over, and I will share my other screen with you. So just sharing across. So what you'll see hopefully now is a desktop where you've got good afternoon and welcome to Office 365. If you're logging into Office 365 for the first time, it's likely that you'll end up here, but once you've been using it for a little bit as a member of staff, you will quite often end up going to Outlook. But this is the landing page that students frequently come to, so it's just to show you what they might see when coming in for the first time. The philosophy behind that from Microsoft is that everything they require, their documents they're frequently using, are here so they can click on them. And vertically down the side, there will be the apps that they will frequently use. Now, I've got a few additional apps because I've got admin privileges, but the majority of the apps on the left, they would have too. You can get the same apps from the app launcher, and the apps that we're going to use this afternoon can be launched from there or the tab on the left, and they will open up in the web browser. Most of the functions in the web apps are mirrored in the desktop apps, but there are a few subtle differences, and we'll discuss those as we progress. I've built in some pause points as we go through this afternoon, so after we cover the different sections, I'll allow you to ask questions, and it'll have to break things up a bit. And please do interact with me. I'm more than happy to discuss anything, or if you've been using something and you found you've had a great deal of success with it, please do share it with everybody else here on the call. So I'm opening up Teams first of all. We've got quite a few different teams here for demo and training purposes. If we ventured into one of my secondary class teams, so I've got students that I'm working with in here, this is specifically a science class team, and as you can see, what we've got is a class team set up with lots of channels down the side. Now, channel might be a new word to you, or it may not, but a channel is a way of subdividing your team so that you can get all of the different functions in that you wish. So in this instance, I'm imagining that I'm a science teacher in a secondary school, and I'm teaching different sets or different groups of banded students, and therefore I'm the subject coordinator, and I can see all the different sets for all the different teachers that are teaching in my subject. In secondary, Microsoft guides you to set up a team so that you've got all of your sets in one area, and you can see there's a padlock next to those sets, which means they're private. That means that the teacher teaching that set, let's say we had Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith taught year 7 set 1 and year 8 set 3. Well, then when Mr. Smith logged in, they would only see year 7 1 and year 8 3. But because I am the owner, I'm the administrator of these teams and these channels, I will see all of them. So the philosophy in secondary is that you have a team per subject, and then you set up all the sets there, and the same would mirror for college. You try to have one team for the subject, and then different cohorts and admission groups would sit as a different channel, and then you give the students and the lecturer access to those channels. Over in primary, it looks slightly different. Because you're dealing with younger pupils, you simply just have the general channel, and the general channel has to exist for a team to be created. And then you just post everything that you have in the single channel. The general channel is used so that you don't confuse primary aged pupils, and so that when they arrive in their team, they don't have to worry if they've got different subjects within a team. They have to worry about where to navigate to. They just end up in the same place. Now, depending on whether you're the owner or whether you're just a member, you'll have more or less rights to change the way that things work. If you're an owner, it means you really administrate it and you can change pretty much anything in your team or your channel. If you're a member, and normally students and pupils are members, they can use it, but they can't fundamentally change the way it's laid out or structurally adjust anything. So there's that peace of mind for you as the person setting this up and running it, that you've got control of it. Now, during the distance learning that's taken place in the last 12 months, many schools and colleges have set up teams, and now they're thinking, well, am I going to continue with this, or am I going to throw it all out? And now we've got back to face-to-face teaching. Is it still relevant? And I would argue, yes, there is many areas of teams that can be transferred back into day-to-day teaching and learning that are really relevant and also make your life an awful lot easier. I still teach each week, and in addition to doing this job, I will be facing pupils and students, and I've certainly kept elements of what I was doing from distance learning or hybrid learning, and I've now brought it into my day-to-day classroom practice. And pupils and students have warmed to that quite significantly, and they felt very much at home because it's got the familiarity of where they were previously, but it takes away the frustration that they aren't stuck just staring down a computer, that they have got somebody to speak with because I'm there face to face, but I'm making the most of the technology that I've got. So without any further delay, let's have a look at an example of how we could do that. The first thing would be assignments. You may use posts less. It depends on what your availability of devices are in school. And I appreciate budgets often dictate there may be only a limited amount of computers in an IT suite or laptops in a trolley. And that might mean that you've only got a slot per week where you can use them. So it isn't going to be the same as when you had them working at home on their own devices, because you won't have a one-to-one device every lesson necessarily, unless you're extremely fortunate and the institution you work in has the finances for that. But by using assignments, I've had pupils and students using assignments during lockdown, and they've got familiar with the fact that they can go in and access their homework. There's also a double whammy there, that whether you are working as leadership at a school or whether you're as a phase or a subject leader, you might be able to make a cost saving. There's lots of expensive platforms out there that you can use for setting homeworks, but they have additional subscriptions. So in the fact that you've got Office 365 means you might be able to get rid of one of those and use Homeworks for setting homework with pupils and students. And I do find that you can successfully use this from Key Stage 2 upwards in the UK. So that would be approximately about 7 years old onwards. And I haven't had a great deal of problem once I've shown students and pupils what to do. So you can see here, I've set for my class a piece of homework, and as it's in science, we're looking at cells and specialized cells. At the moment, I'm logged in as a teacher. So I see that I've only just set this. I've got 8 of my students haven't looked at it yet, and they've not handed it in. If they do view it, this changes to viewed. And as they hand it back into me, they will shift over to the returns tab, which is empty at the moment, but that will gradually move over. So my 8 students finish over here, and then it will allow me to mark the homework. While they're working, I can still give them feedback. So if they were stuck, maybe it's outside school hours, and I'm not suggesting that you should be working in additional hours. I firmly believe in a healthy work-life balance, but if you need to quickly answer a question, or there's something that they missed you that day in school, maybe you were out on some inset or some training, they could ask you the question there about the homework, and you could give them feedback before they hand it in. So you got the option to give that there. And if they dispute that you spoke with them or not, and they're contesting whether they got some support with finishing that homework, it will be there because it will be evidenced. So you can use that to reference the fact that they should have been able to hand it in. What that looks like from student view, if I go across and I enter into student view, it looks like that. We've got our title. Here's my instructions. I do find bullet points are the easiest way of breaking it down, regardless of the age group I'm working with. And then down the bottom here, I have a resource attached. Before you get to that final product, what you need to do is you need to create an assignment. And this is something I still do on a weekly basis. I used to, in the primary school I worked in, set everything through a paper diary. And we've completely transitioned to going into assignments, going to create. Now, it might be if I've got a unit of work and a homework I've used from a previous academic year or a previous sequence of teaching, I can go to the From Existing button, and it cuts down on the workload because I can bring in the pre-written assignment that I've used previously with another group of pupils or students, and I can have it in here. To support you and working with colleagues, you can also borrow homeworks from other colleagues as long as you've been given permission to go into the other sets. And it would make sense if you're particularly working in a secondary scenario, or maybe you're in a primary situation, you've got two form entries, so there's two year 4 groups coming in, that you share between each other, cut down the work that you've got to do. If you are starting from the beginning, you could create a quiz, and that uses Microsoft Forms, and we'll look at that a little bit later. But more than likely, you're going to go to the assignment option, and when you end up in the assignment option, it will come through and it will look a little bit like this. So to mirror what we did in the other homework, it could be that the homework is about cells. I might want to categorize this. So this is a little bit like signposting. You can see that there's a tag there that I've used, a category tag previously called biology. If I wanted to add a new one, I click in the bottom there, or I just tag it on the bottom there. And that might be a way of indicating to you, if you've got a lot of homework set, what it's about, or also signposting it for the students. Now, I'm going to make this an assessment on cells, imagining we're at the end of the project. So it could be that I'm going to ask them to attempt the revision questions, because we're going to have a real in-class test. So revisions test, I'll correct that typo I got there. You can here format your text, you can insert your bullet points, you can also insert a link. So that link can be used to branch out to external resources you might subscribe to, or it could be a website that's really good for revision. So it might be, let's put in there www.bbc.co.uk, and it could be the bite-sized resource. And that's quite a useful resource in the UK. Put that in there. It just means then the student or pupil doesn't have to go anywhere else. They don't have to be searching for it in a web browser. They just click the link there. You would add a resource in, so you can attach resources to the homeworks. That will open up and browse in areas of your computer. Now, depending on how much you have used other features in Office 365, it will by default go to your OneDrive, and your OneDrive can be a great place to store documents. It will in the end replace the area on the server which you might have had previously to restore your work. It's entirely private to you, but you can share documents out to colleagues. You can upload from your computer, so upload from this device will look locally in the files and the folders you've got on your computer. You may want to pick something up from another team that you've got access to. So here I've got access to quite a few teams for this demo one. So it might be that I'm going into the class team, class materials, and I don't believe there is anything in here because I cleaned out the other day. But if there were any files and folders, I could borrow them from the other colleague and I could bring them in here. You can additionally create a new document and then it will save and attach. You can link to another website. In addition to being able to give it any instructions, you can, but you can give some text, which is the description of that, and you can decide whether you want a preview. Or if you're using OneNote class notebook, which is something else we will look at in a little bit, you can attach pages from OneNote class notebook. So it may be, well, in the teachers only area, I've been working in my biology lesson and we've been looking at sequence of learning on cells, and I'm going to attach that so that they can use the work that we've been doing in class to help them. And I'm going to put it into their biology folder because each student has a folder as well. So I'm going to go to done. And then that OneNote, which all my work with them in a face-to-face scenario, is now attached. So unlike when they might have not had their book at home with them, it doesn't matter where they are, they can access this from anywhere at any time, and they'll be able to get what they've been doing with you in class from home or the location they're doing the homework. Even if it's a homework club at school and they're getting support with that there, then the member of staff can see what they've been doing at the same time. If it was a test, you might want to have points. I might say there's 10 points available because there's a certain number of points for the questions that you've got. Or leave it blank if you don't wish to include that. You can add rubrics in. Rubrics are, if I go to one I've used for states of matter, are a good way of giving extra description. So level of challenge here might have extra, hot, spicy, mild. So description might be describe plant and animal cells, functions, and then we give a formal description here by success criteria about what that would look like. And instead of that being particles and states of matter, we would change that to cells. And then you just attach it and it will be there for them to look at. Only need to use a rubric if you think it's something that is going to be quite complicated and they're going to require some clarity over the outcome that's expected. If you don't think it's required whatsoever, then just take it out and use the points or have no points. You then choose which team you're assigning it to. So I'm in my secondary team, so I'm going to assign it there. If I maybe had a colleague that was delivering in another set and I've got permission to, I could tick for it to go into the other teams there, and I could pick it up from there as well. You decide which students you're going to include. You can either have the whole class or you can choose individual students, then a date and a time that you want it to be back in, and you can assign it or you can save it if you want to come back. So anything that's saved will be there for you as a draft. It's only you as a teacher that sees drafts. All of the students will see are assigned assignments, and then as they are all returned and they're marked, they will move down into the return section. So one thing that I've taken from that distance learning and hybrid learning of setting work online because they weren't with me in school is using this. It also allows me to more effectively track it, and I find that the work is there in one place. If you are asking students to hand work in, let's go back to the example there, you need to make sure that what you're asking for them to return can be edited in some way. So you have online resources you might subscribe to, and they could have PDFs. Well, that's all well and good, but how is the student going to write on top of the PDF and get it back to you? Can they print it out and do a scan and a grab and send it back, or are they not capable of doing that? Have they not got the technology? Would it be better to have the PDF as a screenshot and pop it inside a Word document so they can type the answers underneath? So do think about the format that you're setting homeworks in. And then for you, as you set those homeworks, you'll have a gradebook that will appear online. So here is my specialized cells. It's like an online mark book for me, and I can click against any of the students I've got. I can go in here, I can open the student work, and if I've opened the student work and they've returned anything to me, here where I've got this OneNote and they've added to the OneNote I've assigned to them, I would see the work that they've completed and I can give them their feedback and then I can return it back to them. So it's all done individually. They don't see each other's feedback. It's entirely private. They have their own piece of work that's stored in their own area. But as a teacher, all I've got to do is drop down and move in between. So it makes marking quite easy for me. Now, I am a realist and I'm not suggesting that technology will replace paper teaching and learning methods, but it's another thing that you can bring with you and you can potentially utilize to cut down a little bit of the time that you need to do that. I can see that, Ken, you've asked about the form. Don't worry, we will go through how to use forms in just a moment when we go over to OneNote Class Notebook, and you'll see how they can be inserted and included in work. And Forms is a separate Office 365 app, but it can work inside of other Office 365 apps. So I will cover that with you in a little bit. Any questions on the assignments aspect and bringing that from the hybrid distance learning into potentially your classroom practice? Anybody tried that? Anyone have any feedback on that at all? Feeling shy, you can always pop into the conversation. That's absolutely fine. If there isn't, I will just keep moving on and do add them in as we go through. I'll come back periodically and pick those up. So moving backwards, OneNote Class Notebook is something that I've mentioned as a resource I'm going to attach to a homework. OneNote Class Notebook is extremely useful, and I've decided that for ease of getting pupils and students, and because I do often dip into other elements of Office 365, and the schools I'm working in are moving towards making more of the Office 365 apps, that I'm not going to use individual board products for my interactive boards. So you might have had a smart board and used Smart Notebook. You could have had a Promethean board and used Active Inspire. There's lots of different products, and they all have their own software titles. You could save a lot of money by not having to subscribe to them, but also you can make your life a lot easier. So here I've got the welcome page for OneNote Class Notebook, but my OneNote is set up so that I've got various areas that can suit either me privately or working with the pupils and students I've got, but also all the pupils and students have their own area as well. So you can go through that process and set one up. If I just duck out of here I know I've got a couple of people with me who've never done that. So if I went to Class Notebook, it will look like this the first time, and you click OneNote Class Notebook. Unless you've got an existing one from a previous year, you're probably going to choose Blank Notebook. It will tell you that you're going to get certain areas such as collaboration space and content library, and we'll discuss how they work in a little bit. You go to Next, and then you choose the headings you'd like for your students, and you go through and you say, well, actually, I don't want handouts. I would like classwork, and class notes don't work for me, so I'm going to get rid of that. Or you might decide you like subjects. So if I was in here, this might be maths, then I might have number, or I might have shape. You can choose exactly as you like, but doing this now means that when the students are created, they will get all of the sections created for them as well. And depending on how you've got restrictions set, I mean, most schools now have what's called the education policies, and that stops the students or pupils from renaming these. But it allows you then to have these sections where you can file the pages from OneNote Class Notebooks. I'm just going to discard that and jump back over to the other team. Nip back over to that other class notebook. So if you want to get to those sections, you press this, looks like a set of books on a bookshelf. Down the left here, we've got sections and we've got pages. The best analogy I can give you is think of OneNote Class Notebook as a lever arch folder or a ring binder. And then the sections will be like the cardboard dividers with little tabs on them. And they're ways to divide up the information you've got in your OneNote Class Notebook for the folder that you've got in your class or your channel. And then the pages can be filed inside the ring binder, and the pages are unlimited. You can keep adding more and more pages and they get filed in the relevant section. As far as the sections go, you've got lots of different sections available to you. The content library is quite useful, even though we aren't in a distance learning scenario. It's quite useful because if you put a resource in here and maybe you put something in biology, at the moment I've got an untitled page, but maybe we're looking at onion cells because we are going to use microscopes and we're going to insert a picture of onion cells. Now you can work on that page directly there, and it will quite happily keep saving everything you're doing. But because it's in the collaboration space, it means that students can add to it and they can edit it just like I can as a teacher. You need to teach them to be respectful, but it means that in a lesson, we could all have all of our work centralized together collaboratively on one sheet. You might want to have a small group of pupils working on a sheet and have different pages for each group. It's up to you how you split it out. But if you wanted to insert something, it's quite easy. Maybe it's a picture and I'd like to go from online. Well, I don't have to go anywhere else. I can stay in OneNote. So it might be, let's go onion cells. I look for onion cells, up comes onion cells, and I might say, well, this is the sort of thing that you're trying to look for. Double click on it, and then my onion cells straight away there in the OneNote class notebook, and I haven't got to go anywhere else. So I've illustrated what I'm expecting. They then maybe share their pictures or their hand-drawn pictures and they pop them back in here, and we can look at it at the end whether people have got the structure that we've looked at with the nucleus and the cell walls and so forth. If anyone wants to get to that, it's going to be in the biology area and everyone can edit, as I say. The other area that you've got is, sorry, that was the collaboration space I was talking about, and I was in the content library. Collaboration space is the one that can be edited by students and staff. The content library is slightly different, and that is only editable by staff, but students can go in there and they could pick up a page, but they couldn't change anything on it. So just to reiterate, collaboration space can be edited by students or pupils and staff, and content library is only editable by staff. So if I wanted to put a resource in there and then they all had to take their own copy of it, which quite frequently happens in secondary, they would right click over there, go to move copy. If I was Rosie, I would say, okay, I'm working in my biology today. I want to put that in my biology section and I'm going to take a copy. And it's a bit like taking a photocopy piece of paper off of the pile in the classroom. And then Rosie would end up with a copy of that in her area, which she could write on top of, but it wouldn't destroy the original that I had popped into the content library. The last section I'm going to talk about before I take some more questions is the teacher only. Only I would see that because I'm logged in as a member of staff. Students just see collaboration space, content library, and their own section. But I see all of the students because I'm logged in as a member of staff. If I was creating something in here, or maybe I was working throughout the week on a sequence of learning. So here, I can expand out using the arrows at the top. I've got a lesson here about plant and animal cells, and we're looking at specialized cells. Decided to get some animated content in because it allows you in OneNote to not just use pictures that are static or videos, but you can use animations. Down here, I have described what I'm expecting or what successful learning looks like at different levels of challenge. So that's available. And then I'm setting my OneNote class notebook out as one continual progression in learning. So we're going to add to this every single lesson, and they will be able to go back and follow that sequence of learning if they want to. And I've attached this to the homework because I want them to be able to go back and use this. So here, lesson 1, we're looking at sections in the cell. I've brought some more animations in. So we've got cytoplasms, and then as they load up, we've got chloroplast. I think nucleus was next. So that's there, but because it's animated, it's a bit more interesting for them. It captures their imagination. You'd use this sparingly, and the arrows are prompts to keep scrolling sideways. Then we might have some work that they're undertaking on a worksheet, and I might be checking the level of how secure the learning was at a class level by having it up on the board. And then I've got some tick boxes here, and we might say, well, what's present in a plant cell and not present in an animal cell? Well, we've got a cell wall, but we're not so sure if there's mitochondria, but we're going to tick it. Now, the way that I added those boxes in was quite easy. If I go under there and I go to home, over here under the tags, you've got lots of really useful education tags, but one of the things that I use quite a bit, and I encourage pupils and students to do, is a to-do lists. And what you can do is you can type in there, and you can then have your, let's say cytoplasm is in there. You can keep having it there, and you're going to be tick list next to the side. So you could put those in prior to the lesson, and you've got them there for the students to come up to the board and tick if you want that, or you can ask them to interact with you and you can tick it on their behalf. Once you've done that activity, you might go across to the end of lesson 1 challenge, and this is an example of forms and how I've inserted forms in here. So I've made a question where we're looking at the features that exist in both plants and animal cells, and what students do is they tick it and then they submit it, and it self marks. And it's great because I haven't got to do any work and it's just there for me. So one of the other things that I brought in from a distance learning scenario, because I had to use OneNote Class Notebook when I was working with students when they were all in their own individual houses, as I've brought it back, but instead of asking them to necessarily use it every single day, I use it as my teaching tool, but it means that everything that we do is collected and stored in one place, and it's available to them if they want to log into Office 365, but it's also available to me to reinforce and support things like homework, so for them to go back and check what we've learned. And then next lesson, I would simply say it's pause, end of lesson 1, and then move across to lesson 2, and we're going to have a look at specialized cells, and there's a red blood cell, and I'd continue building the rest of my content over here. So you can see how it builds up a sequence in learning. But for me as well, I've cut down on my workload for the next year because I can go back and I can reuse that again. I'll take a couple of questions, and then in the cell assessments I will show you how to insert a form and build that question form that we've got there. So I'm just going to pop back over and take any questions if they've been entered. There's nothing in there at the moment. Has anybody got anything from what we've looked at so far on OneNote Class Notebook before we move into how to put forms into them?
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, of course you can.
I would like to ask you, have you ever used Google Forms? Do you like them? I mean, it's very similar. I see the design, especially collab function.
It is. I train and work in both systems. So I work in Google Workspace and Office 365. I like both, and to be absolutely honest, there's a few nice minor touches in each, but broadly speaking, they will do the same job. So I've got no problem with working in Google Forms if I'm working in a Google Workspace school, or working in Microsoft Forms if I'm in an Office 365 school. They're both pretty good.
And one more thing. So basically in collaboration mode, for example, in Google Docs, you can see the changes the student made. Do you have the same function on Google? I mean, in MS collab function.
You do, yes. So it does mirror in here as well. So you can see the changes students have made, and that's all done through the responses section in here.
But you said there is like advantages of both approaches. So what's the advantage of MS Teams?
Without spending too long on it, we have got some forms training sessions coming up, but so advantages in the Microsoft one, I find it better to link out to resources if you go to quizzes rather than a form, because you can create both, and it will become clear for people that haven't used the Microsoft Forms here at the moment, the features that are available in the Microsoft Forms version for indicating correct answers, linking out to external resources, I find them better than the Google Forms version, and it tends to be very subtle aspects like that rather than anything major. They're both, I find, quite usable platforms.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so assignment bits being built. So Ken, when you say the assignment bit being built, could you elaborate on that for me a little bit? You can either unmute or type it into the chat. I'm happy either way. I'm just going to nip back over from one screen to the other on my side. I'll expand out here. Let me get of the section on the side. So here I've got my assessment. Well, imagine we're at the end of the unit now. I've got a tick list for I want students to read, revise, and then check. I would like to pop this Google form directly in. Now, if you're using the web version of OneNote, it will have a link for Google Forms. But if you're using the version built into Windows 10, or you're using the version from Office 2019 or desktop Office 365, it won't have a link for forms. One of the things that you'll get used to with OneNote currently, or OneNote Class Notebook is there are 3 different versions. There is a plan to unify them and make a single version with single features, but at the moment there will be some tools that are available in the online version which aren't available in the installed desktop version on your computer, and the same will be true. I'll show you in a little bit one of those features because it's quite a useful feature, but broadly speaking, I tend to live most of my life in the online version quite happily. It may be just the odd thing I need to go and pick up in the desktop version. If I wanted to pop in a form, I click the Forms button, and then from the side here, I can choose whether I want to pick up an existing form. Here you can see I've got a sales test, so I could insert that, or I could edit that before, or I can start from a new form or a new quiz. A new form would primarily be used for data collection, and you might use that with students, staff, or parents if you wanted to find out some information about them or their needs. If you're working in a classroom context, then it would be a quiz, not a form. It might be the odd occasion if I was in science and I was working with data and I'm looking at data collection and analysis, there might be a specific reason why I'm going to choose a form over a quiz, because I'm not checking either progress in learning or knowledge, whether it's secure. But mainly, if I'm in a classroom situation, it's a quiz. So if I wanted to go and edit my sales test, I press edit. It opens up Microsoft Forms, and it brings me right over here into a sales test that I've made previously. If you want to find that from the beginning and you don't want to go to it through OneNote, if you click the app launcher, Forms will be there and it will open up and it will look pretty similar. If I jump back over, that's what it will look like, and you will see any forms that you've been creating there, and you can click on it and edit them. Or up here you could choose a new quiz, or the arrow down on the side chooses a new form. But because I've decided to go in and edit, I've got one that I've got here. So I click on it. This is the title. I've decided to put a picture next to the title. I've added in a question. Here I've indicated by ticking that that's the correct answer. If I wanted to change that, I tick that as the correct answer. In here, it might be that when they get the correct answer or the incorrect answer, I can send a message to them. So it might be, great, please try extension task. And then that could be a hyperlink out to a web resource or something like that. You can decide whether you want to have that as a required, very similar to Google Forms. And then on the dots in the bottom corner, you can do things like shuffling order of questions. I normally apply that in a classroom situation because it stops them looking over each other's shoulders and they don't see them in the same order. You can have it as drop downs rather than ticks. You can have subtitles to explain, and you can bring in the branching. The branching I find more usable over in Microsoft Forms rather than Google Forms. So that can be useful if they answer, for instance, question 1 correctly. It might then jump them to the third question for me seeing it from an editing perspective, because they don't need to answer the second question because they've demonstrated to me that their knowledge is secure. In that, branching works to allow the flow through as different routes depending on their prior answers in a quiz or in a question. If you want to add a new question in, you just press the plus new. So there might have been about explaining cells, and if we go in there, it might be there. Let's go down. We are going to, let's rank something. So it might be place these cell sections in order from outside to inside, and then we might have cell membrane, and then we could have cytoplasm. Oh, let's have nucleus, and then cytoplasm. And then what they do is they reorder them as they go. So at the moment, this is how it looks like from me as an editing point of view. If I want to see how that's going to look like for the students, I go to preview, and this is how it would look like on a computer. And there's the ability to move these up and down and reorder them. Click the button there, and here give their more formalized description. I can also check what it looks like on a mobile phone or a tablet, and Forms takes care of scaling all of that for me. It looks quite good, so I'm going to stick with that. If I want to get back to the editing mode, I can do it there. If you want to apply a theme, such as the one I've got around the outside, the themes are there. And if you're not including it in OneNote class notebook, the ability to share it is here. So you share a link and then somebody can get that. So you could just post that directly into the posts in Teams. It depends on how you want to use it. So now I've got that built, I'm going to go back over to here and I'm going to insert that. It will come up on my form and, oh, it's saying that's already been submitted. So let's go back and choose a different one. Let's click on that, get rid of that one. And let's say we're going to insert this one instead. And you can then, just going to play ball, should be able to pick this up and move it down. It's going to play around with me this afternoon. You can then scroll through here, and as a student, I could complete my assessment and submit it in. If you want to get your responses back afterwards, once they have been submitted, you can either view your responses individually one by pupils, or you can get your overarching responses by class. That's really handy, and I find that, again, another powerful way, particularly for either mid-unit assessments or just checking if the learning is secure. It identifies to me any areas that I need to go back and pick up and address, and I can then plan them in future parts of the unit or that week. Ken, thank you for elaborating what you said. You just want to see assignments a bit being built. Can you use other things here? Okay, no problems at all. I can pop back over and show that to you. So if you've got, for instance, let's jump back through, shut down the forms there, shut down the forms there. We've now got our OneNote set up. Let's say that we wanted to add this sales assessment OneNote into our homework. So I could come out of OneNote, let's minimize that, and I go back over to assignments. Just let assignments load up. In here is the assignment that I drafted earlier, and I did that by pressing the create button, and that allows me to build an assignment. Once you come in, you choose your title, and I've chosen sales assessment, biology. I've decided actually what I've given them isn't required because they've already got that from a prior homework, so I'm going to remove that. My description in here might be 10th revision test on, and then I'm going to get them to go to BBC Bitesize. So I've just inserted a link using BBC Bitesize. I might then put some bullets points in here. Check knowledge from lessons. And you keep going with your bullet points, whatever you like it to be. Then under the bottom here is where you would choose your resource. So it may be that you've got a PowerPoint that you want them to have, and that's in your OneDrive. So it might be my teaching folder, and I've got a presentation, so I want to attach that. It could be additionally that I know I've got the sales assessment I want them to take, and that sales assessment is going to be in my OneNote class notebooks. So I click on my OneNote class notebooks. It's stored in my teachers only area, and it's in my biology section of my teachers only area. And there is my sales assessment. So I'm going to attach that, and I want that to be available in their biology section. And I press done. And then there's my PowerPoint presentation where the revision materials are. And I might go back to here and revise any unknown areas. Then I'm going to go down, turn bullet points off, attempt OneNote test. And then they can use the OneNote that's attached, but they'll have their own copy in their own area. And then I can assign that by pressing assign. And once it's assigned, it will appear just like that one there. So that's available for them to use. No problem. So, thank you. Okay, no problem at all. That's all right. if you've used it after, I would say after about 2 or 3 assignments, it will start to become second nature, and it's not too difficult to use. The main thing is once they are returned, they all move to the bottom. Some people end up with them stacking up in assigned because they've got the odd student that maybe hasn't handed their homework in, so you can force that to go over to returned, and then it will move down to the return section at the bottom. So all of that can be taken care of for you, and then you get your grades there. So the OneNote class notebook itself has got lots of different other features that might be of use to you, and those other features could be, for instance, there's math tools built in. Let me get rid of that test that I've got there. I'm just going to delete that one out. The maths tools here, so I've inked on the board a calculation that maybe was related to calculating something, the volume of cytoplasm in a cell, let's just say. Well, we've got tools that are built in which help me with teaching. Now, I appreciate if you don't deal in or you don't teach in a subject that's number based, it won't be so useful, but what you could do when you've typed it on the board is you could highlight it. You can go to the drawing tools, you can click on maths. It will then look at what you've got written on the board, and it will interpret it as typed text. You could ink it onto the page. If it's detected an operation or a digit incorrectly, you can go and fix it. You can choose actions such as, well, let's evaluate what the answer is. And you can either do this as a teacher, or you can show the students and pupils. I've got Key Stage 2 pupils in primary school successfully doing this. Okay, so the answer's 9. That might be all they need to check their work, and then they're able to work backwards and unpick where they may have gone wrong. But if they don't know how to get there, they could go to show steps. So you could have show solution steps, and then on the solution steps, you've got, for instance, there that 12 minus 3 and so forth brings you through, and that brings you to the solution. The little icon there we will come back to, but it will also help you get access to learning in OneNote, in assignments, and it's called Accessibility Tools. As well as having solution steps, you can, if I just drop the resolution on here, I think the resolution is a little bit higher. Let's drop that down to about 75. Should allow me to get down to the bottom. It's not going to. Underneath there is a button that says generate quiz, and then what it does is it generates a series of questions, and you can choose anything between 1 up to a huge amount of numbers in the hundreds if you wish. It will pick questions and it will generate them based on that calculation, and it will give another list automatically on the page of the OneNote class notebook, and students can then have a go at undertaking those. They can then get themselves marked. It frees you up to work with other groups of students and pupils in the class on interventions, and that's given them something to get on with. I've also used that during the lesson where maybe the main classwork's finished. I've then written a calculation on the board, I've highlighted that, and then they've had something else to get on with if I've been teaching maths. So there's the tools that are built in here are quite useful. The drawing tools are there. And you can either use them for annotating over the top of pictures or videos, or you can highlight things that are in animated GIFs, for instance. They're all there. Now, one of the things that helps to make it a bit more interesting is choosing what you're going to do with things like backgrounds. Yes, you can put features in like bullet points. You can change text colors and formatting. All of that is perfectly possible. But I mentioned earlier about inserting information. You can insert a file and you can put it onto the surface of the page of OneNote, and when you click that file, as long as it's in a shared area that the students have access to, if it was a PDF, for instance, that you're going to use in that lesson, it opens up inside of Teams so they don't have to go somewhere else. But here you've got insert file printout. So if you were to choose a PDF and you choose locally from where it's stored on your computer, you load it up from there, and once it comes in, it will print that PDF onto the page. So if you've got it from a pre-prepared set of resources, it will be there on the page, and the students could ink over the top, or they could write their answers underneath by clicking on a text box and typing the answers next to it or by the side of it or underneath it. So you've got the ability to reuse some of the resources that are there. So all those things that I was using in a distance learning or a hybrid learning scenario, I'm now bringing in to blend them into class as well. One of the things that often catches people out is when you go to view, you can change page color. So it might be that you just want to get rid of boring old white, or maybe somebody's got a visual impairment and they need a pale green background or a pale yellow background. You can change that in here and it will apply. But what you can't do in the online version is change to have different types of written backgrounds or lined backgrounds. So if I just share across to OneNote in Windows 10, I've got the same page here. It all syncs through the cloud and it's absolutely mirrored. So I've got the same view of my sections and my pages. But what you can do here is you've got some slightly different options. Some will be the same. You've got things like equation builders, which are in here that aren't in the online version. But if you went to view, as well as having page color, you can change ruled lines. So you could have different spacing on ruled lines, or you could have squared paper if you're in maths, or you can take it away and you can go back to having none. You could have a default rule for every page you create has a certain thing on it, such as lines, if that's what you would prefer, and you know you're going to use that quite frequently. Maybe you work in English and that will help you. At the moment, if you were in, for instance, music and you needed manuscript, there is no way to insert the manuscript and add other papers, but coming in one of the releases quite soon will be the ability to choose a greater range of lined backgrounds, but also to be able to upload your own. So that is something that's being developed. But there are certain things that you can't do in the online version that you can only do in the desktop version. So regardless of whether you've had Office installed or not, there is OneNote in Windows 10. So this is the version that's included with Windows 10 that I'm showing you now. So you can make use of that as long as you're using a Windows 10 computer. If you happen to be on another device, such as a Mac or a Chromebook, you can download OneNote from the various stores that they have on those devices, and it will look pretty similar to this version that's included for free in Windows 10. Just going to swap back over and I'm going to have a look at those things called accessibility tools for you. Reshare my other window. So in here we've got my work that I've been using, and it might be that that's what I want to have read. So I could go here on the View tab to use Immersive Reader. And Immersive Reader is a tool that's built into posts, it's built into assignments, it's built into forms. But what it's doing is supporting access to learning for students or pupils that have learning needs. So the first thing that you will see that it does is it will read out loud for you. So it takes away the busyness and it brings it into an environment where if you press play, choose it in the moment to have it a male or female, there will be more voice ranges coming. You can have a different speed for it to be read at. You might need it to be pretty slow. And then you press play and it will read.
Read. Revise. Talk.
And the text suddenly that a pupil or student couldn't read is no longer the barrier to being successful in learning, because they can have it read out to them. It's not just a reading tool, it's got across the here 3 other options. So in text preferences, you can choose the size of the text. I may be visually impaired and I need that text to be larger, and it changes it for me, but it doesn't change it for any of the other students or pupils using the resources. I can change the spacing, so I can have less spacing or increase spacing to space the words out, so I've got a bit more space in between. Change the font, maybe Calibri, it's too close to Arial and other things. I want it a bit more handwriting, so I can move over to Comic Sans. That's friendlier for me. It may be that I need that pale green background or I need that beige background. I can have whatever I like. And I can have it formatted exactly as the original source was written, or I can turn that off and it will just return to unformatted text. So you have the text preferences tab there. You've also got grammar options where you can have things like nouns, which are marked up, and adjectives or verbs are marked up there. They then could be labeled in the text as well. So they've got my N for noun, my V for verb. I could break things into syllables as well if I needed to understand how to read a word, or I can switch that off. So if you are doing some grammar or punctuation type work, that can be quite useful. If you're just helping people to read, it can also be quite useful. The final tab are the reading options. It could be that I'm working with a pupil that's got dyslexia and there's still too much text on screen, even in this immersive reader view. So I'm going to get them to use line focus. And then that only shows the line that's being read. And in this instance, it's one word on that line, but it will show the entire line of text. You can switch that back off again if you wish to. You've also got the ability to switch on Picture Dictionary, and then built right in here, you've got the pictorial version of the word, and you can have it read. Then here it will translate to another language the text that's on screen. So maybe I came from, let's say I'm Finnish, and I need Finnish and it's by word, or I could have the whole document and it will convert the whole document there to a different language. But let's say it's by word. Come out of the options that I've got there. And what I can do is get them read to me. And when I have them read, I can have them read in Finnish, or I can have them read in English. If you've chosen the other option, you've gone whole document. When you come out of there, you can either have it in the original English form, or you can have it in the Finnish form. So you can quite quickly toggle between your language. So if you've got a range of languages in your classroom, and that's really hard to differentiate for maybe 10 different languages, you can get Immersive Reader to be enabled by the students independently, and it will convert into the language that they require. So it takes care of that for you. And also, as far as you're concerned, you could prepare that resource once, and then it will be available for them in their own language as they need. And when you want to come out, you press the arrow and you're back here in the cells. So there's an awful lot of scope there for you to come in and use that form or use that title or the text on the screen to be able to come in and take care of that for you. So Immersive Reader is another really useful tool, and I said it's available in other areas. So if I was going to assignments, let assignments load up, and I went into this assignment, and it might be if I'm a student viewing this and not a teacher, that's just too much text on screen. Well, there's my friend Immersive Reader hiding up there in the corner. That can now read my homework to me, and I can hopefully complete my homework. But Immersive Reader is built into PowerPoint, Excel, Word. So while I'm typing on screen, I can have it read back to me. I've also got dictation tools in Word, so I could just talk to my computer and it would suddenly capture the text on screen so it appears as typed text. Maybe my teacher's been posting something there, and do you know what? I just can't read that because it doesn't allow me to. Maybe it's too complicated for my current literacy level. All I've got to do is click the button there, enable Immersive Reader, and I can have that post shown to me. If you are posting assignments as well as in posts, if you do happen to have the luxury of students being able to come in here regularly, posts is where they will land, but it will also remind them, unless you untick the box, that they've got an assignment. So they then click that button and they go view their individual assignments, and it will allow them to come in. So I would say using assignments and also using OneNote Class Notebook is two very, very useful ways of bringing skills that have been developed from a distance learning scenario into a face-to-face scenario. Is there any questions at all on the areas we've just covered around forms or using OneNote with forms or Immersive Reader? Okay, I will nip back across. That will look slightly different if you start to use more and more assignments. So if I was taking you across, and let's take you into a class notebook and assignments of a primary classroom, if you've got a lot of assignments, whereas there it was quite minimal. I only had the one draft. Here I've got a couple of homeworks I'm prepping, so they're private to me, not visible to the students I'm working with. Here are the assignments that are currently in progress, and I can see, for instance, on my geography homework, 2 of my pupils have returned that out of 4, but I've still got another 2 to hand that in. Once it's been returned, they will start moving down here to the one where I've got science, so that they will gradually shift down the page. Your mark book will get much bigger, but as you are building up, you can take your mark book offline if you wish, and you can export it externally to Excel. And if you import into other platforms, you can then enter that data in. As far as the class notebook is concerned, In here, I've got quite a few different areas I'm working on with them. But here I've got less students, and in there, because I'm working in a primary classroom and we spend a lot of our time in English, maths and science, I've created sections of English, maths and science. And for me as a teacher, if I wanted to see what Henry had been doing in maths, for instance, and he'd been doing some work on subtraction, clearly he's not actually got very far at the moment, but I can nip in, and just like having their books in front of me, thinking of these sections, they can mimic the different books if I'm in a primary, or they could be the different sections as they were biology, chemistry and physics in a secondary scenario. But I haven't got to have their book with me, or they don't have to have their book at home. They can view their work live in real time, and I can view their work on their pages in their OneNote live in real time, and we've both got access together, so that it can also support the assignments and the homework they're undertaking. You may choose to carry on using posts. You can see some discussions that were going on for me during lockdown. What you'll probably stop doing will be having as many remote learning lessons where you're scheduling meetings and having those lessons, because it's now moved to a situation where most of the time you've got students back with you in class. But you may end up with a class going down as a bubble, and then some of them being at home, or all of them being at home, so you might want to revert back through. So though posts aren't so quite transferable back to the classroom situation, there is a place for making sure that posts are a place where students come and check that they've got homeworks, because it will be there too. So the areas that we covered today, hopefully you found useful as either a refresher or for areas that you can consider bringing back into your daily teaching. One of the other things that we'd like to gift you for coming along today is a code for the Microsoft Education Centre. Now, because you've joined us, what we can do is show you exactly how to do that. But when you enter that code and you redeem it, you will get what's called a Microsoft Innovative Educator qualification, and that will give you the equivalent of 500 points, and then that will allow you to get your qualification in Microsoft Education Centre. So I'll share that code with you in a moment, but first of all I'll show you where the Education Centre is. I'm just going to reshare my screen for you to the presentation that we were on earlier. The Education Centre can be found by opening up a web browser and search for Microsoft Education Centre. As the computer screen shows you on the right hand side, on the very top right hand corner there's a sign in button. You can either sign in with the email address you have from school or college, or you can use a personal email address if you wish. Once you're signed in, you can change where you store your awards, and you can also change the account if later you decide, look, do you know what, I don't want to attach this to my professional school account, I'm going to be moving on to another school, I would like to move it to my personal account. That can be done as well. So there's lots of things that can change in your own personal settings. You'll get the MIE qualification today, and that might lead you to consider being an MIE, and turn it on. We train people to become MIEs. That's people that are digital leaders in their own schools or colleges, and they're bringing about educational transformation, and it might lead you on to consider being a showcase school in the future. So if I just nip down this presentation, I will share the code for you. If you're joining us later on, this code will be left enabled and working. Once you're logged into the Microsoft Education Centre, on the very bottom left-hand screenshot, you will see your initials once you're signed in. If you click your initials, you'll get a pop-out menu. On that pop-out menu, you will see the My Profile section I was just speaking about, where you can change your own personal preferences and settings, but you'll see a redeem code box, which I've circled. That will bring up another pop-up window, and then you enter the code that's displayed at the top there into that and press redeem, and you'll be instantly awarded your points and you'll become an MIE. And you may well also find the MEC extremely useful, because it's got courses for other areas of Office 365, but there are additionally courses on Teams, OneNote Class Notebook, and that's where you can find the support resources from today's training session for you to refer to after this session, because I appreciate we've covered quite a bit today, and there's an awful lot to take in, so you'll be able to go and pick that up from there. I'm also going to paste that code into the chat. So if you don't want to copy it from the screen, you can just go and pick it up from the chat and copy and paste it in once you're logged in. We've got an evaluation form today. If you are able to complete that, I would really appreciate that. That would be extremely useful. It's only a couple of starred tick boxes, and then you'll be able to just press the finish button. Anything you submit is completely anonymous, but it would really help us to design future training sessions and enable us to make sure that we're hitting the areas that people are interested in. I'm just pasting the code in there now. Tiana she's from Turn It On, has just posted the link to that into the conversation, so you can click that link there and go and pick that up. At Turn It On, we also offer various other services as well. So if you want to contact us, you can contact us at office@turniton.co.uk. And there we can support you with other specific training needs around Microsoft 365. We've also got other courses that are running. So if you want to go to the Turn It On website, that's turniton.co.uk, and go to /events. The events section has other training courses that you can sign up to. And if you're in the UK, we offer consultancy if you need it for anything. We also project manage. We deliver technical support to schools. We provide MIS support for MIS systems, and we also deliver education-specific GDPR. So as well as the training you come along today, we can support you with various needs. So really, that leaves me to say, I really appreciate your time coming along today. And have you got any other questions? I'm happy to take them, or anything you'd like to share with anybody else that's here today.
I just wanted to say that it was a wonderful session. And I usually use MS Teams as communication, like synchronous communication. I didn't know about those features, so that was extremely useful. But do you know any feature for screen annotation on MS Teams Pro? Because that's what's missing for me at the moment.
So it will be coming to the whiteboard app in Office 365. So if you went to the app launcher, there's something called whiteboard. At the moment, you can only annotate inside of the whiteboard app, but there will be a feature coming in there where you can use it, such as all the other whiteboard softwares, where you can annotate over the top of another product or another program you have open on your computer, but it's not possible yet, but it's coming.
One more thing is and another thing I'm really missing there is possibility for discussion. I know that there's a feature in MS Teams, but it's more like a chat, right? Like a forum. Anything you could recommend? Maybe it's not very relevant to MS Teams or something.
No, that's fine. So are you thinking of getting a community of staff and students to be able to talk together? Is that what you're thinking?
It's more for discussions for my students. So basically on a specific topic.
Okay. So the way that it's normally done in Teams, if I just swap screens for you, is through the post section. So whether it's specific to a class team, I'm just swapping over now. So it might be, if I went back to here, it could be that there's a maths intervention group here, and these are the students I'm working with for maths intervention. So I've created a specific team, and that's my community space for them to talk together. Or I make a discrete and dedicated channel. So it might be that for my year 7 class set 1, they can all talk in here in the posts, and that's entirely private to them. That's their area to talk with me and talk with each other. It can be moderated by me as a teacher, but it is the channels in Teams that are really designed for that, and then you can control who's got access to those channels.
I see. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for the feedback as well. Are there any questions at all for anybody else? Thank you, Ken, for what's in the conversation there. The evaluation form is from Tiana. It was at 4:35 this afternoon. If you just scroll back up the conversation in the Teams meeting, it's right there. I will just go and grab it and reshare it again, but you can then use that. So I'll just reshare that again. One moment. I'll pop that back in at the bottom. I've just posted that again. There's the evaluation form. It's just below where you've just asked the question. If you click on that link, it will open up in a web browser, and then you can just pop your answers in there. And I do really value the time if you are going to leave some answers in there for me. Any other questions at all? Okay, well, I'll remain here for a few more minutes in case anybody wants to ask something on an individual basis as other people drop off. But thank you so much for coming along today. There are more events coming from Turn It On. As I said, you can find them on the Turn It On website. And I'd like to see some of you back here again if it's at all possible, or anything you're interested in. If I don't see you again, good luck with everything you are doing, and take care of yourselves. Speak to you soon.